Hi everyone, this is Christine from Polyglot Stories. I'm here today with Luca from Lampariello.com. Luca is my senpai, is a way more experienced polyglot and he's more organized.
I would debate that, you know. I would
Really?
debate that, yeah, because you've been, traveling all around the world, you've been learning a lot of languages, so I think you're as experienced as I am.
I just thought it would be very interesting to actually compare our way of studying languages. We probably have things in common and things that we do differently. I think there isn't like one right method of studying languages, and it's good to find your way of studying a language.
Right, but we want to give a few different perspectives.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that people ask me all the time, and I'm pretty sure, Christine, that they ask you as well, is what is the very first thing that you do when you start learning a foreign language?
To answer this question, we will go over 5 steps on how to start learning a foreign language. If you want to know details about these steps, do watch the video till the end.
As far as I'm concerned, I always decide a date in advance, that is a time when I'm going to start learning a language, and normally it's September. Why September? It's because I started learning languages myself at the age of 15 when I started learning German, and I started in September, which is, I don't know about France, but that's the beginning of the school year, and that has become a tradition for me. So every September I start learning a new language, 1 or 2 languages. In 2020 I'm probably going to start Turkish and Romanian. I'm gonna start learning again.
Both at the same time?
Both at the same time.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
And that's the very first thing that I do. What about you? What is it that you do?
The first thing that I do is I research. I don't set a date because
right.
I just start whenever I feel like it.
On the spur of the moment. Like, hey,
exactly.
Today I'm
like,
learn,
hey, I'm just
Tibetan.
gonna learn. Yeah.
Right.
Let's say I want to learn Tagalog. Then I'll just start with searching Tagalog on, I will just Google it, I will search information about Tagalog, what kind of language it is. Like for example, that's what I did for Arabic, because I didn't know if I should start with standard modern Arabic or if I should start with a dialect, and if I do start with a dialect, what dialect would I choose? Is it easy or not to find resources and things like that. And so for Tagalog, what I would do is first Google information about the language, and then I would search things like learn Tagalog. So I would Google that and go into forums and all and see what are the books and series and stuff like that people recommend. I would also search learn Tagalog on YouTube, and I would try to find educational videos where they teach you Tagalog, but I would also try to find videos in Tagalog. So just to have comprehensive input.
Comprehensible input refers to language that can be understood by listeners despite them not understanding all the words and grammatical structures in it. It's like when you don't know the words of a sentence, but you still kind of get the meaning of that sentence thanks to intonation, facial expressions, or context. That's the short definition. I will give you further explanations about this in a future video.
I usually try to create an immersive environment, and so that I can listen as much as possible to Tagalog. So I'll just put videos on or music or whatever and just get ready or clean. But even if I don't understand what they're saying, just hear as much as I can.
And they say Italians speak a lot. I'm kidding. So how much time do you spend researching on the language before you actually start learning it? Or if that means that you already started learning it. So when you start looking at how the language works and these forms, etc.
Usually I start the same day, I guess, because I get really, really excited. It's a new language and
Right, so for you mean you do research and you start the very same day?
Yeah, I think so. And I usually start with a self-teaching book.
How do you start with Korean, for example?
For Korean, I also started with a self-teaching book, and it was Teach Yourself. and it was a book I found in Chinatown in Seattle, and that's how I started to learn Korean actually.
Okay, that's
I was already exposed to Korean before that,
Right.
like by watching series and all. But it's when I started with that book that I started to understand the grammar and stuff like that.
Right, and one other thing that I do, which leads to the following point, is that I always learn with one resource. My piece of advice as a polyglot or a person who learned a bunch of languages is that nowadays one of the most common mistakes that people make is that they try to grab everything that they can because they think we have too much nowadays. Back in the day, when I was 15 or 16, I didn't even use the internet. So I just had one resource, I found it, and I was just grabbing it very happy. And I said, oh, I have this resource, this is mine. But nowadays, the problem is, and this is called the paradox of choice, we have so much stuff. We have YouTube videos, we have all sorts of language learning materials, we have apps, we have platforms, and people get confused. And I always say, one thing that I do in order to start well is choose one resource. I know this sounds a little bit counterintuitive, we have so much, but trust me, if you find the resource that you like, you find interesting, compelling, and comprehensible, then you can use that one resource and then you can build the skills, the basic skills, and then you can move on to other resources. And that's the moment where we can start, I don't know, watching dramas in the language, TV dramas, TV series, etc., etc. But this is what I normally do is choose one resource and then, learn the
Same
basics.
here, I guess. I mean, I do search a lot of resources just for a comprehensive input, but other than that, if it's like studying, I just stick to one or two resources. But before doing that, actually, I try a lot of things. I try a lot of different things, and I take a look at different books, and I see what's seem to be right for me. And usually self-teaching books are the best, like Assimil for European languages, and for non-European languages I go for Teach Yourself. But for non-European languages it's not enough usually. I need other books.
Yes, because I mean you speak Asian languages much better than I do. I speak Mandarin Chinese and Japanese, but I found out that for some languages, actually other resources that I normally use and they work really well for European languages do not work with Asian languages.
Right.
And the third point that I want to emphasize, and this is, I'm really interested in this because I've never asked you this question, is what do you actually do with this stuff? Because one thing is to have the book, and what really makes a difference is how you use it. I'm going to tell you how I use it, but first I want to hear how you use it.
Oh, which book?
It doesn't matter. Like any language book, could be Teach Yourself, could be Astimil, could be Genki for Japanese. I don't know what you use for Japanese, so I don't know. But what is it the very first thing that you do when you have a book and you're just holding this book in your hand?
It's really difficult to answer because I've done different things every time. Because the more you learn languages, the more you gain experience learning languages, right? So I started to do things differently.
That's a very good answer. Can you give me an example? Like, do you read the book? Do you listen while reading the book? Just a few things if you tried.
I usually read and listen to the audio at the same time.
At the same time, okay.
Yeah.
And do you do it multiple times, or do you do it?
Yeah, I do. Of course, I do it multiple times.
And how do you go about decoding the text?
Because I have the translation of my target language.
So you use language material that has two languages.
Right.
At least two languages. So you never use monolingual books.
Not at the beginning, for sure.
Okay, very good. How I use, as far as I'm concerned, I use books in the following way. I take the native language, I take the target language, and I switch between these two languages. I translate from the target language into my native language, and from my native language into the target language. And by doing that, I basically absorb the patterns, the grammar patterns and the phonetic patterns of the language. And this is a method that is skill-based. We have this tradition of 200 years of education based on knowledge, meaning on acquiring knowledge. That's the reason why I don't know about you, but I don't know of anybody who has learned the language to fluency at school. And what I do is that I make sure that I learn the basic skills of speaking a language with a few words, and then I build upon that. Well, at school, the tendency is to learn a bunch of grammar patterns or grammar rules and vocab, but then you cannot string sentences together. So that's what I try to avoid at all costs. And I guess you do the same, maybe consciously and or unconsciously.
Yeah, I do the same, but I know that you write sentences, like when you do.
Yes, I do. I type more than write. I type like with the
Oh,
computer.
okay, you type. I did not know that. I thought you
New discovery.
Yeah. No, I just do that in my mind. So
Right.
I'm gonna read a sentence in Russian, for example, and then I'm gonna read it in French or English, and then I'm gonna compare and I'm gonna see if I understand, and then I'm gonna try to see what words correspond to what word, and then I'm gonna read the sentence again. I'm just identifying each word, and when I think that I understood the sentence, I just go to the next one.
Right, but you
Something
don't.
like that.
So you do translate mentally or not?
Yeah, mentally I translate.
So you do translate too.
Yeah.
You just do it mentally. So what
Yeah, I
about
do it mentally.
what about learning the spelling? How do you learn the spelling if you don't write or practice the spelling?
That's why my writing skills are weak.
Right. One of the things I do,
Yeah.
and I think that what she does is wonderful, because by translating you learn not only the words but also the structure. But the reason why I write things down, or better, I type, is because by typing, when I translate back into my target language, I also learn the spelling. I make a lot of spelling mistakes, and I realize the mistakes that I make by translating back.
Right.
I think Luca is perfectly right about the spelling thing, but there is an advantage to proceed the way I proceed. Because doing a lot of the same thing helps you improving one skill in particular, and at the beginning of learning a language, I like to get a feeling of the language. In the case of non-European languages, writing down the sentences slows down my absorption of the language, and that's why I personally prefer not to focus too much on my writing skills at the beginning, although I do learn the scripts right from the beginning.
The thing is, like, I'm too impatient.
Right.
Like,
I've noticed that in 6 years. I've known her for 6 years. She's
Yeah,
I'm
so-
kidding.
so when I'm reading a text, I'm trying to absorb as much vocab as possible.
Right.
Like I'm trying to read a lot of text, and I'm like I need to know more.
Bring it out.
Yeah, I'm like, exactly. I'm like, bring it on. I want to be like immersed and know as many words as possible. And this might seem counterintuitive to many people, but it's easier for me to memorize words when there are too many of them.
Right.
It's easier for me to memorize 200 words in a text than 50 words in a list.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But for a lot of people, it doesn't.
Right. It's true. To each his own, as they say. Everybody learns in a different way.
So, to sum up, first you need to set a starting date. This can help you with planning your language learning journey. Second, research information and resources so you have everything you need to get you started well. Third, create an immersive environment at home. Listen to a lot of content in your target language. Fourth, stick to one main resource, especially at the beginning so that you don't lose focus and don't get overwhelmed. Fifth, use translation to learn new words and grammar patterns. Translation is a great tool to learn vocab and grammar in context.
So that's it. We answered the question, how do you start learning a language? Let us know what you think about this and how you personally start learning a language. We would be curious to know, right?
Yep.
Luca covers a lot of topics about language learning, so check out his channel. It's like really interesting, and you're probably gonna learn a lot.
Thank you, Christine.